It all began so uneventfully, so ordinarily, that I sometimes wish there'd been some dramatic prelude. Like something out of a thriller, a shadow lurking in the hallway, or a mysterious voicemail that sent chills down my spine. But it wasn't anything like that. It was just another Tuesday, the kind of day that slips by unnoticed, like countless others. Ma, my husband, had just come home from work. He asked if there were any clean sweatpants, and that was it. Just a simple, mundane question. I remember thinking how normal everything felt, the kind of normal that you barely register because it's so routine. I had just gotten back myself, and I was in the kitchen, wrestling with some leftover penne that had turned into a solid, unappetizing mass in the microwave. Ma came in, kissed me on the forehead, murmured about being tired, and went off to change. Nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary. Then came the silence. The kind of silence that makes you pause, not because it's loud, but because it's so sudden. I was just standing there when Ma called my name. It wasn't an urgent call, but there was something in his voice, something that made me stop what I was doing. I didn't rush. I didn't feel that knot in my stomach that usually accompanies bad news. I just put the fork down, rolled my eyes at the thought of Ma needing help for something trivial, and headed toward the bedroom. There he was, standing by the open closet as if frozen in time. His hand was outstretched, pointing. I followed his gaze, not expecting anything out of the ordinary, but then I saw it. At first it was just a blur among the clutter. A beach towel, a hoodie, a lone sock, typical chaos. But there it was, nestled almost too casually between the folds of fabric, a bra. I remember frowning, trying to place it, but it wasn't mine. It was a pale pink, delicate lace tracing the edges. The kind of thing you'd wear on a night meant to be remembered, not something you'd throw on absent-mindedly. I picked it up, felt the warmth of it, like it had been worn recently, and my heart sank. I turned to Ma, trying to make sense of it, trying to find words to explain what seemed inexplicable. We stood there, the silence now a chasm between us. My mind raced through possibilities, each more absurd than the last. Maybe it belonged to a previous tenant and had somehow surfaced after all this time. But no, it was new, not dusty or forgotten. It was here, now, and it didn't belong. I wanted to laugh it off, make some joke about a reverse bandit leaving behind lingerie instead of stealing it, but the words felt hollow. Ma's face was unreadable, his eyes searching mine for answers I didn't have. I realized in that moment that I was standing on the precipice of something that could change everything, and I felt helpless, not knowing how to step back or move forward. We returned to the kitchen, the air thick with unspoken questions, and I tried to focus on dinner, but the quiet was oppressive, each clink of cutlery a reminder of the uncertainty that had just entered our lives. In those moments when everything seems to shift and the ground beneath your feet feels less like a foundation and more like a trapdoor, you start to question everything. It was an ordinary evening, or at least it was supposed to be. I was going through the routine, mechanically, trying to keep my mind from wandering into dangerous territories. We were sitting at the table, dinner laid out in front of us, but the air was thick with unspoken words. He looked up, breaking the silence with a question that cut through my thoughts like a knife. "Are you experimenting?" I blinked, caught off guard, not understanding what he meant. I asked him to explain, but he didn't. Instead, he mentioned finding things that weren't mine. My heart skipped a beat as I realized where this was going. He thought I was cheating. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I dropped my fork, the clatter echoing louder than it should have. The idea that he could think that of me was more than just a misunderstanding. It felt like a betrayal. I stood up, trying to defend myself, but the words felt hollow. I had nothing to hide, but his silence was deafening. Why wasn't I more upset? In that moment, I realized I wasn't angry or panicked. I felt disoriented, like my life had been replaced with a version I didn't recognize. And as I stood there, unable to form a coherent response, he looked at me with an expression that suggested his worst fears were already confirmed. The next day was a blur, my mind replaying the conversation over and over. I couldn't shake the feeling of being caught in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Sleep had been elusive, and the tension between us was palpable. We talked, but our words were wrapped in layers of passive aggression, each sentence a potential minefield. I found myself sorting laundry in the kitchen, trying to distract myself from the chaos in my head. That's when I found it. The slipper. It was small, powder blue with a decorative bow, and definitely not mine. Instinctively, I knew it was a harbinger of trouble. The sole was worn, a sign that someone had used it recently. It felt like an invasion, a piece of evidence in a mystery I didn't want to solve. I heard the front door close and panic set in. I should have confronted him with it, but instead, I hid it behind my back like a guilty teenager. He walked in, his eyes moving from me to the laundry to my awkward stance. He asked what I was hiding, and I knew I couldn't keep it from him. I pulled out the slipper, the silence between us growing thicker. He looked at it, then at me, and simply said, "Yeah, I knew it." His resignation was worse than any shouting match. He left the room, leaving me alone with my racing heart and muddled thoughts. I was left with more questions than answers. I couldn't rely on him for clarity, and I didn't trust myself to figure it out on my own. So I went to my mom. She was at the dining table, absorbed in her phone, her face a mask of concern. I placed the slipper in front of her, and she glanced at it, asking if it was mine. I told her it wasn't, explaining how it ended up in the laundry basket. I also mentioned the bra he had found in our closet the day before, which also wasn't mine. Her eyebrows raised slightly, an indication that she was processing this new information. She suggested it might be a mix-up, but I shook my head. The bra was the wrong size, and the slipper was foreign to me. She asked if he had been acting differently lately, and I had to think. He hadn't been strange, but maybe a little distant, preoccupied. She pointed out that he had been stressed, and I couldn't deny that. Then she hesitated, as if weighing her words carefully. She admitted that she had seen something a few weeks ago. I felt my stomach drop as she recounted coming home early one day and seeing him with someone. A woman, young, with dark or maybe light brown hair. She hadn't gotten a good look, and she hadn't told me because she thought it might have been innocent. But now, with the slipper and the bra, she wasn't so sure. I sat there, stunned into silence, trying to process this new revelation. My mom watched me, her expression tinged with disappointment, but not in me, more for me. There is this moment I keep replaying in my mind, like a scene from a film I can't quite escape. It was an ordinary day, or so I thought, until my sister, Sienna, pointed out something that shattered my perception. She told me there was a pink bra in my closet that wasn't mine. Her words hung in the air, piercing through my bubble of trust with my husband. I didn't want to believe it. I was naive, she said. I looked at her, then at the slipper on the floor and back at her again, trying to process what she was implying. She said my husband, an actor, could easily fake surprise or sincerity. It was his job, after all. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of her accusations pressing down on me. She didn't budge, just watched me with that knowing look. She called me too trusting, said it was my lifelong flaw. Without responding, I turned and left the room, feeling a strange sense of liberation from not feeling guilty for once. Outside, I just walked aimlessly, needing to distance myself from the house and everyone in it. My mind was a whirlwind of contradictions. He's not cheating, I told myself, but what if he is? Sienna's certainty was unsettling. As I rounded the corner of our block, something my mother once said echoed in my mind, a detail she shouldn't have known. I stopped in my tracks, realizing I had overlooked something significant. It hit me then, changing everything. Reflecting on my childhood, it seemed mostly normal, filled with bike rides, cartoons, and soggy grilled cheese sandwiches. I had an older sister, Sienna, who was 2 years older. People often said we looked alike, but in reality, we were so different. She was the vibrant one, always the center of attention with glitter in her hair and dramatic performances in the living room. I was the quieter sibling, content with observing and entertaining myself with a notepad and markers for hours. Sometimes I felt like Sienna was the favorite, though I could never quite prove it. It wasn't overt, just subtle differences in the way our parents reacted to us. They responded quicker when she cried and took more photos of her. Maybe it was just my imagination, or maybe it was the natural pull of her charisma. But when the first real rift between us happened, it was anything but subtle. It started in college. Sienna got accepted into a prestigious acting school in the city, the kind of place with velvet seats and tuition that could bankrupt a family. Our parents didn't hesitate. They funded everything: tuition, books, housing. They co-signed loans and spoke of supporting her dreams as if it was the most important thing they'd ever do. 2 years later, I was accepted into a finance program. It wasn't flashy or creative, just solid and reliable. When I showed them my acceptance letter, they congratulated me but then apologized, saying there was no money left. It wasn't that they didn't want to help, it was just that Sienna's dream had drained their resources. I said it was fine, that I'd figure it out on my own. And I did. Scholarships, 2 jobs, student loans. I graduated on time without any fanfare or family photos. They didn't even ask about my final project. Meanwhile, Sienna was between productions, and they were still funding her headshots. Eventually, I found a real job. It offered stability, benefits, and a desk with a drawer. I saved diligently, hustled, and bought a house. It wasn't lavish, but it was mine, achieved without anyone's help or offer of assistance. Then, by some twist of fate or cosmic joke, I met Ma through Sienna. They were doing a stage piece together at a tiny black box theater. I went to see it, partly because I hadn't seen her in a while, and partly because I hoped supporting her art would stop her from asking for money. Ma wasn't Sienna's, they were never dating, but she clearly had a thing for him. She mentioned him more than anyone else in the cast, praised his timing, and called him underrated. When Ma and I started talking, she got weird. When we started dating, she got even weirder, skipping congratulations and instead saying, seriously, followed by crying to my mom for hours about betrayal. I wasn't sure who betrayed her or why, but from then on, the roles were set. I was the thief. She was the wounded artist. And, predictably, my parents supported her narrative. Ma and I stayed focused, got married. It wasn't a big wedding, just a simple ceremony in a backyard. My mom still complains about not being seated near the cake. A few years later, my parents lost their house due to bad investments, health bills, and probably another round of tuition for Sienna's masterclass in New York. They moved in with us temporarily, they said, just until they got back on their feet, just until they figured things out. It's been almost 2 years now. They occupy space quietly, like an ever-present fog. My mom works part-time online, and my dad works these odd shifts at a warehouse. He's always around, floating upstairs or passing by my mom like he's just an extra in his own life. They never outright insult him, which almost makes it worse. Instead, they ask these pointed questions that feel like little corrections. Questions like, "You're still doing theater, huh?" Or, "Have you ever thought about something more stable?" And to me, they say, "Wouldn't it be easier to be with someone who shares your world?" It's like they're trying to plant doubt in my head, and I used to laugh it off. My mom did too at first, but over time it started to feel like there was this stone under my mattress that I couldn't quite find. You know that feeling, right? When something's off, but you can't put your finger on it. Then came the play. Sienna and Mika were both cast in this new local production. It was a historical drama with all the cliches: candlelight, tight costumes, bad accents. I told myself it was fine. It was just a coincidence. They were professionals, and I trusted him. I really did, but my gut was telling me something else. My mom's reaction didn't help at all. She was thrilled, like she was hearing about a royal wedding or something. Sienna acted neutral, which for her meant trying not to look too smug. And Mika, bless him, treated it just like any other gig. He'd come home tired, eat whatever leftovers were around, and rehearse his lines out loud like he always did. But I felt it. Something was off. It was inching toward the center of the room, making itself known. And then, out of nowhere, there was the bra, the slipper, the silence, and the accusation. My mom, in passing, said something that I couldn't shake off, like it was obvious, like it was something she shouldn't have known. She said, "There's someone else's pink bra in your closet, and you don't even suspect your husband of cheating." That's what she said, right? That was the line. But here's the thing. I never told her it was pink. Not once. I hadn't mentioned the color at all because it wasn't about the color. It was about the fact that it existed, worn and not mine, planted in our closet like a relationship I didn't remember having. But she knew it was pink, which meant she'd seen it. She didn't hear about it. She put it there. That realization didn't even feel like a shock. It was more like a snap, a very quiet, very sharp snap inside my chest. Something that had been tight for weeks just gave way all at once. My mom had planted the bra, and if she planted the bra, she probably planted the slipper. My stomach twisted at the thought. I didn't just walk back to the house. I stormed. The house was quiet when I got there. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you wonder if maybe someone already knows they've been caught and fled, or worse, knows they haven't been caught yet, and is planning their next move. I pushed the door open and kicked off my shoes hard enough that one bounced against the wall. I didn't care. I was going to confront her right then and there. I was done. But instead of finding my parents upstairs pretending not to hear the chaos, I walked into the living room and saw Mika sitting on the edge of the couch. He wasn't watching TV, wasn't reading, just sitting there, elbows on knees, hands clasped, waiting. He looked up at me with eyes that were tired, like he hadn't slept, like he hadn't stopped thinking since I left the house. My anger paused mid-breath. I said, "Hey," and he didn't say hey back. Instead, he said, "Your mom told me everything." My stomach dropped. I didn't know which everything we were talking about, but it couldn't be good. "What do you mean?" He took a long breath. He said he wanted to hear it from me, but he guessed I wasn't going to tell him. "Tell you what?" He looked up, not angry, just hurt. "Are you seeing someone?" I blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "A woman?" I opened my mouth, then shut it, then opened it again. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Your mom said she saw you, that she came home early one day and you were with someone, another woman in the house." I actually laughed. One of those involuntary, stunned, high-pitched laughs that sound like they belong to someone trying not to cry in public. "Seriously?" She said she didn't want to tell him because I'm her daughter, and she didn't want to damage anything, but now she felt he had the right to know. I dropped my bag. "And you believed her?" He looked away. She was convincing. Oh, wow, she was convincing. I mean, she's not a trained actor. He winced. I exhaled, sharp, shallow. "No, I'm not seeing anyone. I'm definitely not seeing a woman. And by the way, if I was cheating, which I'm not, I wouldn't bring someone back to the house I share with my parents. You and 2.5 kinds of mold." "I didn't know what to think," he said. She said it so clearly. And the bra, the slipper, it just... I shook my head. "Okay, stop. I'm going to say this once. My mother is lying. It's been a while since I decided to sit down and talk about this. Sometimes the hardest part is just pressing record and letting it all come out. But here I am, ready to share what happened in a way that's as raw and honest as I can manage. I guess it all really started that day when I found out about my mom's little scheme. It's not like I didn't know there were issues. I just didn't expect them to blow up like they did. So there I was, standing in the living room, my mind racing through a mess of emotions, trying to wrap my head around the fact that my mom had lied to me. You know, it's funny in a way how something so small as a misplaced slipper or a bra can unravel so much. She had told me about seeing Mika with another woman, described her in detail like she was painting a picture meant to hurt me. At first, I didn't believe it. It seemed too surreal, too out of character for Mika. But she was convincing. She talked about pink slippers and a bra, things she couldn't have known unless she put them there. And that was the moment it all started to crack. Mika sitting there, face blank, trying to process this betrayal. His only words were, "Why would she lie?" And then, like some twisted clockwork, the front door opened, and there she was. My mom walking in like nothing was wrong. I told Mika to hide, to give me a moment to confront her without him in the room. It felt like we were defusing a bomb. When she walked in, I acted as normal as I could, asked about Mika as if I didn't know the answer. I brought up the woman she claimed to have seen, wanted her to describe her again. And she did, without missing a beat, like she had rehearsed it. It was then Mika stepped out. Her reaction was priceless, caught in her own web of lies. I had to confront her, with Mika standing there, listening, watching. It was surreal. She didn't deny it, didn't even try to explain. Just put her purse down and walked upstairs, leaving us in silence. Mika turned to me, apologizing, but it wasn't his fault. He thought he wasn't enough for me because of the seeds of doubt she planted. But he was. We stood there, holding hands, not saying much, just feeling the weight of what had happened. I didn't sleep that night, lay there with Mika beside me, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. I couldn't just leave it. There was more to it, and I needed to know. The next morning, I went upstairs. No drama, no shouting, just a need for the truth. My dad was there, acting like nothing had happened. But when I asked him if he knew what Mom did, his face gave him away. "It wasn't supposed to hurt me," he said. But it did. It was meant to destabilize my marriage, something they thought was harmless. They didn't think Mika and I matched. I was practical. He was dramatic. But isn't that what relationships are about? Balance? They just didn't see it that way. And then my dad dropped another bomb. Sienna. Apparently she had feelings for Mika, something they thought looked real on stage. They saw this as a second chance for her, at the expense of my marriage. It was insane. Sabotaging my life for a performance, for a chance that didn't even exist. I was stunned, trying to process how my parents could justify this to themselves. It was like they had decided that their perception of happiness was more important than mine. I didn't say anything for a while, just let the silence hang between us, heavy with unspoken words and emotions. I felt betrayed, not just by my mom, but by my dad too. This wasn't about what was best for me. This was about their idea of what my life should be, about their inability to let go of their own desires and dreams. I thought about Mika, how he must feel in all of this. We had been pulled into their game, and now it was time to find a way out. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had to believe we could do it. I had to believe our relationship was stronger than their schemes. I remember that moment so vividly. Sitting there, the silence hanging heavy between us. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach that something was terribly wrong. It was like a storm that was about to break, and then it did. I leaned over the table, looked him straight in the eyes, and asked what he'd done. He admitted it, planting the bra, the slipper. I felt my jaw clench, anger bubbling up inside me. "Why?" I asked. "Why would you do that?" "To test us," he said, "to show the cracks, to make me see them. He wanted it to break, our relationship. He didn't even try to deny it." "You're too different," he told me, "and she's perfect for him." Perfect. That word stung. I nodded, just once, and left the room. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt this cold resolve wash over me. I went to my computer and typed up an eviction notice. The words came easily, almost like they were already written in my head. I printed it out, stapled it, folded it carefully. Then I went back upstairs, placed it on the kitchen counter, and turned to face them. I told them they had 30 days. After that, I wanted them out. My mom tried to protest to remind me they were my parents, but I was her daughter and still they chose someone else. She said I was overreacting, but I didn't listen. I put the notice on the fridge next to the grocery list, a final reminder of the family we once were. This time I told them they didn't get to rewrite the story. I thought that would be the end of it. It should have been. But there was one piece that didn't fit, one question that kept gnawing at me. I needed to know if Sienna had been part of it. Had she watched me struggle and done nothing? I drove to her apartment, no warning, just a need to know the truth. She answered the door looking casual, like she hadn't been expecting any of this. I told her everything, laid it all out there. The bra, the slipper, the deception. She was shocked, genuinely taken aback. They did what, she asked? I watched her closely, looking for any sign that she was lying. But I didn't see any cracks. She said she thought they were acting strange, but not like that. I felt a weight lift off me, a small relief in knowing she wasn't part of it. Then she told me about Marcus, her new boyfriend. I was surprised but happy for her. She said they hadn't been thrilled because of his race. That hurt, knowing what my parents had become. They had been trying to rewrite not just my life, but hers too. They couldn't accept her boyfriend, so they tried to push me back into something I didn't want. I stood up, told her she hadn't done this, but they had done it for her. She nodded, apologized, and for the first time in years, I didn't see her as an enemy. I just felt tired. Later, standing in my kitchen, my husband came up behind me, wrapping his arms around me. We stood there, silent, not much left to say. But in that silence, something new began to settle. Not peace, not yet, but a distance from them. And maybe that was enough for now. Fast forward a few months, and my parents are gone. They've moved out, taken all their boxes and baggage with them. I've gone no contact, blocked their numbers, emails, everything. I don't care about the playlists we used to share. What I miss is having parents who didn't lie to my face. They've tried to reach out, sending articles, voicemails, texts, saying they miss me. But I don't respond, and I don't plan to. The funny thing is, Sienna barely talks to them now either. After everything they've done, even she backed off. They supported her for years, invested in her career, but even golden children have their limits. She's not fully no contact like me, but she keeps her distance. She says they drain her, which is a polite way of saying they tried to control our lives without our consent. And here's the unexpected part. Sienna and I are good now, really good. She and Marcus are serious, they've moved in together. He's great, makes her laugh in a way she hasn't since we were kids. And we talk more, share more. We're rebuilding something that was never truly there. It turns out, when you remove the part of the family that kept causing chaos, the rest of the house becomes a lot easier to live in. So that's where I am now. No contact, no apologies, and no more second chances. Did I go too far or not far enough? You tell me.